Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Willem Marx. I'm an editor for custom programming at Dow Jones. We're here to talk about redirected focus, and really appreciate you getting up early to join us for this conversation. I'm joined by Elizabeth Gaines, the former CEO and now the Global Green Ambassador for Fortescue Metals Group, based in Australia. Thanks so much for being here. CP Gurnani, the CEO of Tech Mahindra, and then on my far side, Khalid Humaidan, who's the CEO of Bahrain Economic Development Board. A range of geographies, a range of perspectives. Thanks so much for all of you for being here. I'm going to start with you, Khalid, if that's okay. We've had a year of economic turbulence. I think that's pretty widely accepted. Uncertainty, shifting commodity prices. It's impacted the way that countries and companies around the world think about energy security in particular. And I wonder how that has energized your own efforts when it comes to thinking about inward investment in a country, Bahrain, that's historically rich in traditional energy sources.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, very good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for the Wall Street Journal, and thank you for attending, please. Energy security, when we talk about energy, it's the same issue is with more than energy. It's producers and consumers. It is with raw materials, final goods. That relationship is for food, some electronics, and even for services. There's a lot of disruption across the board, and we need to figure out what type of network would make the relationship between producers and consumers sustainable. In terms of us, we're an agency responsible for attracting FDI to Bahrain, and we know there's clearly three global trends. Number one is the world is going to continue to go digital, the world is going to go green, and supply chains are being redefined. We think that is an opportunity for us, and we have to position ourselves to be able to attract the investments that will further those trends globally. And at the end of 2021, because of the changes in the world, there's opportunities that exist today that didn't exist 5 years ago, which is like Citibank. Just an example. Citibank in 2021 announced that they're looking for a technology hub around the world, and they have tested talent pools all over the world, and they decided that Bahrain is the new home for their technology hub, and they've committed to hire 1,000 Bahraini coders. This is a young Bahraini working in Bahrain, providing a digital service to one of the leading banks and institutions in the world. That wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago, but because of the digital world, it is possible, and we need to continue building on that. If we focus on those opportunities, we think we will continue to be able to attract investments into the country.
CP, Khalid mentioned their supply chains, and I want to ask you, these headwinds we've seen, the energy crisis prompted by the invasion of Ukraine, the eventual gradual end to the COVID-19 pandemic, how do they, in your experience, impact supply chains? And what's been the trickle-down effect across the world, but particularly in emerging economies, of the challenges those supply chains have faced?
So, just a quick introduction on Tech Mahindra, the company that I represent. We are about 160,000 technologists in over 90 countries. And for us, if you go from a technology point of view, on one end, yes, we all know that energy crisis, energy costs, they all, became little difficult. Most of the commodities market, we all know that both from a supply chain, logistics, warehousing, each part of it was in a way tested for endurance, and it did definitely, we all discovered the lag out there. So to me, the lessons out here were very simple. From a person who runs 160,000 technologists around the world, it was very, very clear is that the talent shortage, that is the oil or that is our human capital. So for me, my chairman visiting Bahrain and asking me to explore a bigger presence in Bahrain, it just tells you is that it is a common issue, which is the talent management. Secondly, from a technology point of view, most of us have realized Mahindra and Mahindra, where we are the largest SUV manufacturer in India, I mean, we have a wait list of almost 2 years on our popular 4 models. Why? Because most of us do not realize that an average car today has about 200 semiconductor chips or more. A EV will have a lot more. So there are technological challenges, and it is for us to recognize and start doing risk management as plan A, plan B, and plan C.
And of course, Elizabeth, all of those EV cars require a huge amount of materials, often quite new materials in the quantities that we're talking about today. And you come from that world of taking minerals out of the ground and selling them. And I want to ask you now, in your new role where you're focused on issues around sustainability and around climate, isn't surely one of the concurrent challenges when we talk about supply chains, the idea that a lot of these supply chains are entirely new? What does that challenge look like from your perspective when we're trying to develop new technologies, get them into new markets?
Well, I guess we're focused on not only the raw commodities, because we're actually transitioning from being a resources company to a resources and renewable energy company, green energy. So that's our focus. And so we're looking across that entire supply chain, from the energy generation, and we're investing significantly in energy generation, through to those technologies and the commodities. So we recognise that there are some challenges around the availability of commodities, so we're very focused on that part of the supply chain. But the technologies and investing in those technologies, our goal is to produce a significant volume of green hydrogen by 2030 and to decarbonise our mining operations. And to do that, we need access to electrolysers, for example. So we're actually building the world's largest electrolyser manufacturing facility in Gladstone in Queensland, and that's very well advanced. So we're looking at it across that entire supply chain. We recognise there's opportunities to actually create value, reduce emissions, and we're taking the lead. As a large industrial company, we have a target to achieve real zero by 2030, not net zero. So it's a critically important part through that entire supply chain, but we're investing in those technologies because we recognise that relying on others may not actually enable us to achieve our goals.
And when you talk about investing, I'm really interested in this. We've seen this concern over the last 12 months in particular around energy supplies. We've seen the margins that some energy producers are creating. What is that doing for investor appetite in the kinds of transition technologies you're talking about? Has it slowed down at all?
No, we're seeing that there is significant investment. There is a real recognition that the world is transitioning and that there is a sense of urgency in this energy transition. So we've invested in technologies. We bought Williams Advanced Engineering in the UK at the beginning of last year. That battery technology will be a fundamental part of our decarbonisation because we're going to eliminate 800 million litres of diesel usage in our mining operations over the next 7 years by 2030. So we're seeing that there is enormous appetite for investment and a real interest in the fact that we're taking the lead as a large industrial company to achieve that real zero from an emissions perspective. And we're also seeing demand for the energy that we're going to produce. So there's investment in terms of, we've seen our shareholder base grow from 80,000 to 180,000, and that's a recognition of our approach to decarbonisation. But we're also seeing demand from customers, both from our resources customers who are looking for a product that is free of emissions, because everybody's looking to obviously reduce emissions. But we're also seeing demand for that green energy that we're going to produce, including a large MOU with E.ON in Germany, offtake arrangement for 5 million tonnes of green hydrogen by the middle of this decade. So there's significant demand, there's significant investment, and there's a huge flow of investor funds into those ESG-dominated funds.
And Khalid, what does that look like from your perspective? Because I feel like every single day people in this room will have heard about new emissions targets, new climate initiatives, and that's important because we need to get to that point. What does that mean for your work? What are you seeing in terms of the way that people are approaching those kinds of initiatives in terms of the way they're thinking strategically?
Yeah. I think what's important to note is when it comes to climate and the environment is the change from leadership about how to address this issue. Climate has been stress tested. It's not a fad, it's not going to go away, it's been stress tested. There was the perfect excuses to say, not now, after the war, after COVID, when growth starts to accelerate. But the commitment is there, nobody's using any excuses, we want to move to that. And I love the idea of, instead of net zero, it is real zero. I called it true zero. And net zero is the day that you stop doing bad things. True zero. Real zero is the day that you've done enough good to offset the bad. And that should be the target that we need to go to, is the conversation needs to evolve. It's good to start with net zero, and you need to get to net zero before you can get to real zero or true zero. But at a point in time, and we start to see statistics being circulated around, we've all seen this, is the per capita, and it is over decades. This was the environmental numbers. All of this is very good. The commitment is there, everybody's continued towards that. I would like to see my region of the world, our region, the Gulf Cooperation Council, we could be one of the few countries in the world that can reach real zero or true zero before others. And we would like to see that conversation gaining momentum.
CP, he mentioned their numbers. And of course, data and advanced digital technology is a big part of your business. What role do you think that has in allowing governments, policymakers, stakeholders, companies, investors, consumers, that idea of having access to data and using it for these reasons? What role do companies like yours play in that, do you think?
So one is, I just want to expand on, Your Excellency's, focus on country becoming net zero or real zero. From my point of view, it is the inversing the pyramid which has worked well. That reversing the pyramid when every employee has started questioning and they feel it is their responsibility and their role, and they participate in the sustainability targets. They set those sustainability targets. And, in a funny way, in India, during this festival of lights called Diwali, I remember my children transforming suddenly. One Diwali, they were negotiating to get better allowance so that they can buy more crackers. And second Diwali, they said, yeah, give us more money, but we are not going to buy crackers. Why? Because they got educated in the school on the harmful effects. So I think from a sustainability part of it, the more we are involved, it's not only the leadership, it is actually, we have to pass on the leadership to the youngsters, and then the real change will happen. Regarding the role of data, clearly, so one is, just to take the few simple things. The few simple things in life is, let's analyze, Sri Lanka almost went bankrupt. Why did they go bankrupt? Mainly they couldn't afford to pay for the energy bill. Now, if those two equations are correct, could they have avoided it? Now, there's enough data to show that they could have avoided it. Now, whether it would have been, it's a large country, large agricultural produce, why couldn't they have what Brazil does, which is their, biofuel strategy, where 20% of ethanol is blended into the, the fuel. So I think data has a very important role. It's the same way. We all saw a vaccine coming out in record time. And it came out in India through a separate process. It came out in US, it came out in Germany, through 3-4 different processes. How does that happen?
So I like this. You're talking about data for holding governments accountable, perhaps for their mistakes. You're referencing Sri Lanka the past year or so. And then innovation. And Elizabeth, in your world, when you talk about, I'm going to save X million litres of diesel over the next 7 years. That's something, a prediction driven by data,
Yep.
presumably. What else does that look like in your world in terms of the use of data for innovation?
Well, look, I think the mining industry is often thought of as trucks and diggers, but it's actually a highly data-driven business, and we use data all the time, whether that's to predict emissions and to look at long-term mine plans, but also we have operators in Perth in Western Australia operating mines over 1,500 kilometres away. So it's all based on this remote operations. We're very data-driven, technology-driven, and we see a huge use for that. Obviously, measuring emissions and also the plans that we have in place to reduce emissions will play a part. But the further use of robotics, the further use of artificial intelligence and remote operations, I think one of the biggest changes that we will see as we transition away from a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we operate 24 hours a day in the mining operations, and we assume there is energy available 24/7. But we will use data to go down much more of a demand-driven approach to mining. And when energy is available, that's when we will adjust our mine plans. And that's actually quite a significant shift for the whole industry. So I think this clean energy transition, that use of data and intelligence to focus on this demand-driven model will be a significant shift for the mining sector. And we are leading the way, but I think others will quickly follow. But it is quite a significant change, and we will have to retrain our entire workforce as well, because they are used to that energy being available 24/7. So we see data having a huge role to play. We already have the largest autonomous haulage fleet in the world, so all our haul trucks, we don't have any drivers, and so that was a big transition for our workforce. And so data plays a big part in that. But I do see that the use of data and technologies will have a significant role to play in this energy transition.
So, Khalid, was talking there about retraining workforces and trying to change direction. For an economy like yours, how important is that? You've already mentioned the role of increasing digital infrastructure, that Citibank example you gave.
Yeah.
How important is it from your perspective when it comes to educating workforce, providing the skills that young people need in order to benefit from that changing world?
From our experience, it starts off with education, and we're talking about science, technology, engineering, and math. That is the basic. Once students, and enough students, have that aptitude, then the upskilling is relatively easy. And this is what we've seen, is that there's intense courses when it comes to coding, where you could take somebody with a STEM education and make them into a coder. So that is possible. That's what we need to do. Like what CP mentioned, is that the global shortage of coders is going to last. And Bahrain can do a little bit to supply the world. The chances are we won't be able to solve this problem. But there is an opportunity if we get it right. And one thing that we've realized is this is the easy. The other side, English is important. The chances are coders will need to communicate with other teams around the world. The chances are they're going to be speaking in a common language, which is English. They're going to be connecting to teams all over the world, and that is important. Number two is the ability to adapt to other cultures. This is one thing that we've seen in global teams, is that there is, for instance, a team in New York would gravitate to working with a team somewhere and not another team. And it's because of cultural differences. You will need to be able to train the young in order to be adaptable to different cultures, accepting to different cultures. And this is what we think is somewhat of an advantage for us. It's something that most of the young Bahrainis are bilingual, and we're adaptable to other cultures, and we see them integrate well with global teams. But I think that is important. In addition to that, is no matter what we do locally, the chances are you would want to complement a local team with expatriate talent. You need to have the right visa processes in place. This is why we launched the Golden Visa, Talent Visa. That's important. You need to make sure that you're developing talent and attracting talent from abroad if you would like to become a technology hub. This is the experience of Bahrain, and I think it's applicable to any other country that's looking to play a role in solving the global problem that we have, which is a global shortage of coders around the world.
CP, I think you can acknowledge that India's already played a big role in that over the years, right? And I wonder, leaving aside your kids and their wisening up to the cracker allowance at Diwali conundrum. When we talk about educating workforces in India, from your experience, how has that helped expand trade, expand opportunities, and diversify India's economy in your experience?
So, in a lot of ways, take a step back. I mean, ultimately, every individual, every company, every country sets certain goals. Our country has set a goal that we want to be the third largest economy in the world by 2030. And clearly, our biggest asset base is the human capital. Now, for that human capital to be resilient and relevant, there is only one way that you make sure that their skills are always in not only relevant, but also we are able to anticipate what the demand would be. So most of us, for example, we at Mahindra Group run a university. And the only reason we chose to run a university as part of our corporate social responsibility is because we genuinely believe that for us as a company to succeed or our country to succeed, like what Your Excellency said, that education has to be the priority. In our case, it is also reskilling, upskilling, and continuous skilling is a priority.
Elizabeth, before I come back to you, Khalid, I just want to ask you, you mentioned their visa situations in Bahrain, and of course, the broader issue there is around regulation, legislation, transparency, all of these issues that businesses really care about. And I just wonder, when you talk about the current world we live in, it's multipolar, and that's not just politically, but it's also from a regulatory standpoint. Many different countries have many different regimes when it comes to visas, when it comes to investment, when it comes to rule of law. And I just wonder, what are the requirements for policymakers, do you think, when it comes to encouraging cross-border investment, cross-border transactions from a regulatory perspective?
Yeah. We'd all love to live in a world where there is a global shared economy. The chances are it's not going to happen immediately. What we need to think of is what are the baby steps towards that, which is instead of one single fully integrated network, we need to have smaller networks. And then that's what we need to achieve is bilateral relationships is important, and cross-border data sharing and a shared economy. Very important. We have data centers and we have fiber, and every company, every country can build their own and decide not to share. Or we could share. It would make us more efficient. It would make us more competitive. But we need to think of a network of like-minded countries and companies where we start sharing with. It's important. And with regards to crypto and what it teaches us about cross-border data flow, it's going to happen anyway. Whether we like it or not, data is flowing between borders. Yes, there's a certain element of regulation that we need to do, but to be able to think that we can live in a world where we're in full control and everything is there not to be shared, everybody's selfish, is probably an inefficient world, and it will lead to a company or a country becoming uncompetitive. To gain competitiveness, you need to work with others. We did working with Amazon Web Services. They came to the Middle East and they decided we want to build a hyper data center, and they were looking at multiple jurisdictions to base themselves. And one of the things that attracted them to Bahrain was our willingness to be the first country in the world to issue data jurisdiction law, which is if there is an American or a Swiss company who hosts their data in Bahrain, only a court from their country, a US court, would have jurisdiction over that data. Wow. And it's unique, but this is the sort of things, and we do it with certain countries that are partners that we're comfortable with, where we're able to offer them that type of data jurisdiction where there's a treaty or an agreement signed between the two countries. We think that's important. That's the first step to making sure that data can move freely between borders, and we can continue to benefit from the efficiencies of shared infrastructure.
Elizabeth, I want to stay with regulation, but also come back to talking about workforces. And you come from a country with this long tradition of labor protection. You're a company that's moving into new areas, and I suspect that must to some extent mean geographically you're talking about a partnership with Aon in Germany, for instance. How important is it as a company when you think about creating this, let's call it equitable prosperity? How important is it when you look at potential partners to think about the regulatory environment in which they operate, especially when it comes to workforce?
Yeah, look, it's a really complex area. I think, though, the most important thing is the workforce is very engaged, and governments are actually getting behind the energy transition. So in Australia, we've had a change in federal government last year, and we now have a much more ambitious climate policy and targets, and I think that has really energised the workforce. And if I look at our own workforce, people are really engaged because we're investing $6.2 billion US to decarbonise our entire operations and achieve real zero by 2030. So we've got very strong engagement from our existing workforce, and we do. This is a global challenge, and we see global opportunities. So we need to work with governments and regulators around the world. We've done that in the past, though. We have other operations through our mining operations with other countries. What we're finding, though, in this, a forum like the World Economic Forum is a great opportunity to also engage with world leaders. And the Bahrain example is I think, there's much more commonality in terms of the energy transition and those opportunities. There are always some barriers and some challenges, whether that's visas, access to talent, but I think I'm more optimistic that there's actually more genuine engagement and that we can work with governments and other policymakers. We've got some very good examples ourselves of how we've taken workforces and transitioned them from, someone who was driving a truck to then, we didn't make anyone redundant through that process. We took 700 people out of what were fairly manual jobs, but we retrained those people, and now some of them are working in that remote operations centre in Perth, running mines, thousands of kilometres away. So retraining, reskilling, investing in people, and I don't think there's a government in the world that doesn't want to see that type of opportunity for their people. So I think leading by example, we're a large industrial company, we've got plenty of real experience in this. And I do think there is that willingness, and I am pretty optimistic that as we look at these global opportunities, we're going to find ways to engage and make sure it is equitable, that we are providing local jobs, because there simply aren't enough people. If we wanted to just do it with our own workforce, we just couldn't achieve that. The acquisition of Williams Advanced Engineering in the UK, we're creating 500 new jobs in the UK in the battery technology area. So I am optimistic. I think governments, we need to work closely with governments. Business can't do this on its own, but we need to engage and we need to make sure that we're promoting the benefits, and I don't think anyone would argue that there is a genuine opportunity globally in this energy transition.
CP, I think we've got time for one more question. I want to ask you, following on from that, one very effective way of kind of promoting opportunity for young people and existing workers, perhaps of an older generation, is to make sure that your economic growth, your business success is sustainable. And we talk about that from a financial sustainability, but then also from a environment, planetary sustainability perspective. When you're talking about sustainability with your clients today, what are you saying to them? What are you offering them using your data, your technologists, 160,000 around the world?
So I think the best way to look at, you started by asking what data. End of the day, there is enough data points available. Question is, do we synthesize it? Do we produce it on a platform in a timely manner where all of us are able to act on that data? I think there is a huge awareness. Number one, sustainable companies or companies which have sustainability as a focus get better valuation. That is an economic driver. Number two, when people are looking for investments, if today the plans are addressing climate issues or sustainability, there is more investment available. And number third, as I said, ultimately service industry is people, and people means purpose. And if the purpose is sustainability, it works like magic, both ends, for your client and for your own organization. And the more you do it on a technology platform, the more transparent you are.
I have many more questions. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm going to leave it there. Elizabeth, CP, and Khalid, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you.